Good morning, Kuhner country. Okay, my friends, an historic week last week, capped off by an incredible, monumental Supreme Court decision, and now we're on the cusp of potentially the Senate passing Trump's big, beautiful bill. So, here it is, my friends. Trump now, in the last, I'd say, week, maybe 10 days, is now on one of the most impressive winning streaks in presidential history. First, he knocked out and utterly decimated and obliterated Iran's nuclear program. Huge win for the region, for America, for the world. But he wasn't done. At the NATO summit, he achieved what every other president has wanted, but were unable to accomplish. He got every single NATO member, with the exception of Socialist Spain. They're the only holdouts. Outside of the socialists in Spain, every single NATO member has now agreed, listen to this, to contribute 5% of their gross domestic product, GDP, into military and defense spending, adding an extra $1 trillion with a T into NATO. In other words, he has now made NATO a military juggernaut, unparalleled in history. But he wasn't done. He wasn't done. And people forget, Biden tried and failed. Obama failed. Bush failed. Clinton failed. Bush 41 failed. This has been going back all the way until the time of Harry Truman and Eisenhower to get the Europeans to pay their fair share in their own collective defense, NATO on the European continent. Every president until Trump was unable to do it. Trump did it. And then came the historic decision Friday morning. The Supreme Court, in a 6-3 decision, all 5 conservatives joined by Chief Justice John Roberts. The opinion itself was written by Amy Coney Barrett. Oh, ho, ho. It is one of the most devastating opinions ever written in the history of the Supreme Court. And they finally reined in, limited the power of the lower courts, these rogue judges, these federal district courts and judges, to issue universal or nationwide injunctions. These are the rogue activist judges that have been blocking Trump ever since he was inaugurated in January. In other words, the power now has been taken away from these out-of-control judges and put back where it belongs, to the president, to Congress, and to the people who elected them. A massive, I cannot overstate how massive this victory was for Trump. I'm going to play some cuts. He was on cloud 9. One of the biggest victories of his entire presidency. And then over the weekend, the Senate voted with two major exceptions. Rand Paul and Tom Tillis, those two Judases, voted against the big, beautiful bill, but Trump managed 51-49. They voted to advance the bill for a final vote. They're now going through the amendments. They're going through the last process. It appears he has the votes in the Senate to pass the big, beautiful bill, and it's on track to come to his desk either on July 4th or July 4th weekend. Now, I don't want to jump the gun. The House still needs to pass it as well. But right now, he's got an incredible victory over Iran, an incredible victory over rogue judges, 5% GDP spending commitment from every single NATO country, with the exception of Spain, and he's on the cusp of the big, beautiful bill, which would be the signature achievement of his second term. My friends, Donald Trump is on a roll few presidents have been on, but the one that made him smile ear to ear, because now he is unshackled. Now he will not have the veto that these rogue, imperial, out-of-control, radical left judges have imposed on policies that Trump was elected to enact. And so, as I said, in a 6-3 decision, and the issue dealt with birthright citizenship, they haven't made a final decision yet. That's going to come in the fall on birthright citizenship, whether it will change the interpretation of the 14th Amendment. That is going to be for another couple months. But they dealt with the underlying issue, which was a nationwide or a universal injunction issued by these out-of-control judges, whereby liberal special interest groups, and that's what they've been doing since the day Trump was elected, since the day he was inaugurated, they go judge shopping. And they always go to a deep blue state or a deep blue area or district, and they get some sympathetic moonbat judge, a hack. And suddenly that hack issues a nationwide block preventing Trump, and it doesn't matter what the issue is. It could be birthright citizenship, his executive order on that. It could be defunding sanctuary cities. It could be cutting off all the funding for transgender operations, so-called gender reassignment, sex change operations on youth, on minors. It doesn't matter what the issue is. Doge and implementing Doge cuts. In other words, cutting waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government. Trump has been blocked by these little kings, by these little wannabe emperors and wannabe presidents in the imperial judiciary, the rogue, out-of-control judiciary, as Amy Coney Barrett said, unprecedented. Over 25 universal injunctions in less than 100 days into Trump's presidency. So they were blocking Trump where they had no right to block Trump. In fact, as Amy Coney Barrett wrote for the majority, these judges do not have the constitutional or statutory authority, i.e., the legal authority, to be issuing universal injunctions. They were not obeying the law. They were exceeding the law, overreaching, and violating their oath as judges. Trump now can proceed with his executive orders. Trump now can proceed with the policies to enact by the executive branch. Listen now to President Trump saying this is one of the biggest victories, first term, second term, it doesn't matter. This is a monumental victory for the Constitution, for the separation of powers, for the rule of law, and yes, for President Trump. Roll cut one, Mike.
Well, this was a big one, wasn't it? This was a big decision. An amazing decision, one that we're very happy about. This morning, the Supreme Court has delivered a monumental victory for the Constitution, the separation of powers, and the rule of law in striking down the excessive use of nationwide injunctions to interfere with the normal functioning of the executive branch. The Supreme Court has stopped the presidency itself. That's what they've done. And really, it's been an amazing period of time this last hour.
It's I can't tell you. The ground is moving as we speak. The reaction by the Democrats, by the anti-Trump media, by the left tells you everything you need to know. An epic meltdown. There's no other way to put it. Some were literally crying. Others were despondent. They're yelling and screaming, "This is a dictatorship! He's now unchained! Oh my God, Hitler rising!" No. What this means is that their strategy of lawfare, the Democrat strategy of using rogue judges in the courts to sabotage, undermine, and obstruct Trump and essentially paralyze his presidency is now over. Judge Amy Coney Barrett, in an absolutely brilliant opinion, and I'm going to get into the details. And by the way, she smacked down Justice Jackson, Ketanji Brown Jackson. It was epic. It was unprecedented. She destroyed her. This now has ended the left strategy of lawfare, and now Trump can enact the very policies that he was elected to enact by the American people. Okay, my friends, an incredible victory for President Trump at the Supreme Court. Just to show you how egregious, honestly, how outrageous. You want to talk about a naked abuse of power. All of these ridiculous nationwide injunctions that were being used by left-wing Democrat hack judges. And again, it was always the same playbook. They would go, these liberal special interest groups backed by the Democratic Party, and they'd say, let's find one judge, just one, in some very left-wing district or community. And that judge would then rule against Trump on any issue and then say it applies to the entire country, thereby blocking Trump's presidency, ultimately nullifying the will of the people. It was, as Amy Coney Barrett said, judicial tyranny. It was an imperial judiciary, as Amy Coney Barrett wrote powerfully and eloquently. She goes, don't talk to me about this as an attack on democracy. It's quite the opposite. It's authoritarianism. It's fascism. It's rule by one person, an unelected judge, an activist judge with a robe. And that is not what the Constitution intended for lower courts to be. I mean, it was an absolutely brilliant opinion, and she's right. And so what they did was, under Trump, they were able to go judge shopping, find one moonbat judge who didn't care about his oath or the rule of law or what the Constitution actually says or the meaning of the Constitution or what the role of a judge actually is. No. Just boom. And by the way, to show you how they abused it, I don't want to get into the weeds here, but they would often issue these universal, as they're called, or nationwide injunctions without even hearing the government side. In other words, we just got to stop Trump now. We can't even wait 24 or 48 hours for the government to put their brief together and let's hear what the government has to say. No. It was coordinated. Give me your complaint. Give me your lawsuit. And you'll come in to the court. Tell me, come in, attack Trump. Got it. Boom. Nationwide injunction. And the government's like, but you haven't even heard our side. That's how abusive it was. Now, make no mistake. What the Democrats were saying is that the will of the voters doesn't matter. That the separation of powers doesn't matter. That the Constitution doesn't matter. That the role of the executive branch, which is defined in the Constitution, and it's been working for hundreds and hundreds of years. Congress makes the laws, the executive branch enforces the laws. They were now saying no. A single judge can make up the law, block the law, prevent the law from being implemented. In other words, these rogue judges, they were the real kings. And of course, the Democrats now have gone, ballistic. Democracy is dying. This is a threat to democracy. Trump now will be unchained. And Amy Coney Barrett dealt with that completely in her majority opinion, backed up by Chief Justice Roberts, Alito, Gorsuch, Thomas, and Kavanaugh. And they said, no, he's got to follow the law like every other president. And there are a million ways to remedy if a president abuses the law or commits overreach or usurps power he doesn't have. But what you don't do is have a judge exceed his or her power to try to block the executive branch. It's illegal, it's unconstitutional, and it poses a mortal threat to our system. And she's completely right. Completely right. Amy Coney Barrett has written, I'm telling you, a majority opinion for the ages. Now, listen to Trump saying everybody is happy, outside of the crazies and the Democrats. Everybody is elated. Why? Because now these group of radical judges can no longer block the will of the people and usurp the president's power. Roll cut 1A, Mike.
There are people elated all over the country. I've seen such happiness and spirit. Sometimes you don't see that, but this case is very important. I was elected on a historic mandate, but in recent months we've seen a handful of radical left judges effectively try to overrule the rightful powers of the president to stop the American people from getting the policies that they voted for in record numbers. It was a grave threat to democracy, frankly, and instead of merely ruling on the immediate cases before them, these judges have attempted to dictate the law for the entire nation.
They were trying to set national policy. That's what these rogue judges were attempting to do. They were, as they say, legislating from the bench. They literally were trying to set policy, national policy, for the entire nation. And remember, many of these laws were enacted by Congress. And they're saying, no, to hell with Congress. No, to hell with the president. I don't care if you won. I don't care what campaign you ran. I don't care what you promised. I don't care what your platform was. You don't run this country. We run this country. That is now over. Over. Now, listen to President Trump saying, let me tell you what this means in practice. Now we can move forward on a broad range of fronts. Roll cut 2B, Mike.
So thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with these numerous policies and those that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis, including birthright citizenship, ending sanctuary city funding, suspending refugee resettlement, freezing unnecessary funding, stopping federal taxpayers from paying for transgender surgeries, and numerous other priorities of the American people. We have so many of them. I have a whole list. I'm not going to bore you, and I'm going to have Pam get up and say a few words, but there's really, she can talk as long as she wants because this is a very important decision. This is a decision that covers a tremendous amount of territory.
Oh, yeah, this is it. I'm telling you, this is the game changer. And now you're going to see sanctuary cities defunded. You're going to see these 6 cities and states that continue to engage in mutilation, gender mutilation of transgender children. Their money is now going to dry up. You are going to see now Doge cuts finally being implemented. I mean, I could go on and on and on. So the days of activist judges ignoring the Supreme Court or ignoring the Constitution or thinking that somehow they're above the Constitution or destroying the rule of law, those days are now over. They're over. Lawfare has been smashed. And so Trump now can move ahead with what he was elected to do. So my question to you, and I want to take calls right after this break, 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, and only the way Trump can do it. He can explain something that is quite complicated, very important, obviously, historic. Actually, this was an historic Supreme Court decision. It is going to go down as one of the most important in American history. There's no question. And really make it come across as very simple and relatable and understandable. And listen now to Trump saying, here, I'll sum it up for you. You want to know what this decision does? Roll cut 3A, a mic.
Taking power away from these absolutely crazy radical left judges is a tremendous. This is such a big day, and it gives power back to people that should have it, including Congress, including the presidency. And it only takes bad power away from judges. It really doesn't take power. It takes bad power, sick power, and unfair power. And it's really going to be, this is a very monumental decision.
Bingo. He's completely right on every count. So it just takes the abuse of power away from these district court judges, as he puts it, bad power, sick power, and restores it and returns it to where it should be in a constitutional republic, in a democratic republic like ours, to those who are elected, i.e. Congress, who makes the laws, and the president and the executive branch that enforces the laws. And that's literally what the decision does. It restores balance to the Constitution. And it ends the nightmare of lawfare. And frankly, it was the Democrats who were waging war on democracy. Because they were putting up one judge, unelected, unaccountable, and essentially saying that judge has national veto, can block anything Congress does, can block anything the president does. That's, as Amy Coney Barrett brilliantly said, that's not democracy. That's a judicial dictatorship. Or as she put it, an imperial judiciary. And here was the killer blow. The killer blow was, it's brilliant. The opinion itself is going to be studied. I think it's going to be turned into a book. I'll be honest with you. A short book. Because it goes all the way back, I don't want to bore you, but just in 30 seconds, to the 1789 Judiciary Act, which was one of the first acts passed by the first Congress, by our founding fathers, which established and designed the judicial system. And as Amy Coney Barrett writes, and concurred, agreed to by all the other the 5 other justices, they said, there's no authority ever given to a judge to issue a nationwide injunction. Ever. Ever. So they never had that authority. They were never given that authority. And for nearly 2 centuries, as she put it, they never were allowed, they never did it. So as she said, it goes against the Constitution, it goes against 2 centuries of precedent, and it goes against the rule of law. I mean, it was devastating. It was devastating. Now, let me just say this, and then I want to go to the phone lines. 617-266-6868 is the number. In plain English, what she's saying is, you don't have the constitutional legal authority. You don't have the authority to issue these universal or nationwide injunctions. You're just making it up. You've exceeded your brief. Stay in your lane. No one made you the Supreme Court. No one made you president. No one made you Congress. This is grotesque overreach. I mean, she slapped them down and slapped them down hard. Now, this now is going to change, I think, so much for the Trump presidency. It is going to change so much, frankly, for our Constitution. And I think now what you're going to see is Trump is going to move now aggressively. Deportations now are going to speed up dramatically. You are going to see the defunding of sanctuary cities. You're going to see judicial activists, for example, like that clown Brian Murphy in Boston. His days now are numbered, because now he'll be in repeated open defiance of the Supreme Court. So right now, activist judges have been punched legally right in the nose. And the Democrat strategy of lawfare is now in tatters. This is a massive win for Trump, for the Constitution, for the separation of powers, and for the rule of law. See, it's as if now Trump can really begin his presidency. I know he's been in power for 6 months. I get it. But now he won't have these judges blocking him, putting up obstacles, preventing him from doing what he was elected to do. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, do you agree with the decision, disagree with the decision, and what do you make now of the Democrats and the media's hysterical argument, and it is hysteria, that this is democracy dying, this is the end of democracy, this is it, Trump can now do whatever he wants, and no judge can stop him. So this is how they're trying to spin it, that the Supreme Court and Ketanji Brown Jackson literally accused the majority of this very thing, that this sets the path for Trump now to become a dictator and to achieve total and complete power like a king. I say these people are insane, but that's me. I want to hear from you. 617-266-6868. Arthur in Chestnut Hill. You're going to kick us off, Arthur. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Arthur.
Well, to begin with, the reason that this goes on, and Trump has never learned. You know, he's tough enough with his foreign policy, but he's not tough enough with what goes on in his own country. What these judges have done, they've committed criminal acts. These were not lawful orders, and by him paying attention to them and obeying those orders, he was enabling these judges to do what they were doing, and that's where he was at fault. He should have. Schumer has bragged, okay, that he appointed 235. Him and Joe Biden put together 235 progressive judges with the express purpose to obstruct Trump from everything he was going to do. They called him lawless before he even became president. And they put out these 235 judges for this purpose. And guess what? This is exactly what's been going on. They waited and they started to go after everything that Trump did. And Trump paid attention to him. You know, when I was in the military, you know, you have to obey all your orders.
Arthur, can you do me a big favor? Please hang on. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer, 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, we're obviously going to get into the big, beautiful bill and the massive fallout from that as well. But first, Trump wins huge, monumental victory at the Supreme Court. Let's go right back to Arthur in Chestnut Hill. Arthur, you were making the point that Trump needs to get a lot tougher on his domestic enemies here at home who are out to destroy and sabotage his presidency. Please pick up where you left off, Arthur.
Well, that's what they've been doing, Jeff. And when you get all these judges all doing the same thing, and it was something that was planned ahead of time, and it was for one purpose and one purpose only, to obstruct his presidency and keep him from enacting the policies that he was elected to do. That's obstruction. That's against the law. And when you have all these people involved in the same activity and doing the same act, that's called a conspiracy. And I think these judges should be hauled before a grand jury, and they should be suspended from being on the bench and see with that investigation and get the attorney general. This stuff has got to be stopped once and for all. He foolishly responds to people who turn around and break the law over and over again. They violate the Constitution, which is the law of the land. They say that he violates the Constitution, but usually it's the people who make the claim are the ones who are guilty of the claim. And and I don't know why he doesn't take a more forceful act. You know, Schumer is one of the most despicable human beings I've ever seen in Congress. Okay, there is, lie after lie. I mean, he should have been arrested for the remarks he made against
Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. Yeah, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh.
And as a result of his remarks, okay, they we know Kavanaugh was threatened, and since he made those remarks and nothing happened to him for it, you've got political leaders all over the place doing the same thing because nothing happens to anybody. I've watched some of the most vicious people ever, the most vile people that ever existed in this country, like Fauci, especially Fauci, and Nancy Pelosi, all criminals walking around, and Hillary Clinton, all walking around free. No one gets arrested. You know what? And Biden, of course, for being such a traitor and selling this country out. I can't believe that these people just keep walking around and with nothing ever happens to them. And what they've done to my country and your country it just defies.
Oh, it's criminal. Oh, you're dead on. No, Arthur, again, as usual, you are on Trump's on a roll. You're on a roll, Arthur. You're completely right. 1,000, as I like to say, not 100, 1,000% correct. And look, you're right. And these rogue judges now should be facing sanctions. They should be disrobed. They should be thrown off the bench. You're completely right. This was part of a conspiracy by the Democrats. It was a coordinated plan from the very beginning. And Norm Eisen, who was one of the architects, openly admitted it. He admitted it. He gave a speech saying, no, to everybody, relax. We've got key judges in key district courts. We've already spoken to them. We're going to be pushing lawsuits. The moment Trump tries to do anything, we are going to paralyze him. These judges are going to vote against him, and they're going to block him and put in these nationwide injunctions. So their goal was to nullify and overturn the election and paralyze Trump from day one, hell, before day one. And now the Supreme Court dropped the hammer. Thank God. Arthur, thank you very much for that call. And I just want to very quickly, because the lines are blazing, 617-266-6868. Just to show you, okay? Just to show you how abusive this had become. Under George W. Bush, 6 nationwide injunctions issued by judges, district court judges. Obama, 12. Biden, 22. Now, I can't think of 2 presidents who are more power drunk, okay, drunk on power, than Obama and Biden. Almost everything they did was extra constitutional, unconstitutional, or illegal. But let that go. 12 and 22. That's it. Trump, in his entire first term, 64. Within the first 4 or 5 months of his second term, okay, what is he still? He's got 3.5 years left to go. 40. So they almost hit him with as many nationwide injunctions within the first 3 to 4 months of his second term than they hit him with throughout his entire his first term, and that was a record, 64 universal injunctions or nationwide injunctions. In total, 104. And as Pam Bondi said at her press conference, almost all of them Democrat-appointed hack judges from blue districts or blue cities or blue jurisdictions. As she put it, they just go judge shopping. They go, okay, no, oh, this one. He's one of ours. He'll block him, no problem. That day, those days are now over. Over. 617-266-6868 is the number. Mark in Medford. Thanks for holding, Mark, and welcome.
Boy, Jeff, winning never gets old, does it?
Well, Mark, remember the Patriots under Brady and Belichick? They just kept winning Super Bowl after Super Bowl, and I'm like, it never gets old.
You're stealing my thunder, Jeff. I was just going to compare it to the New England Patriots. Not only are we witnessing, Jeff, probably the greatest presidency in the history of the United States, but as the Patriots we're witnessing a freaking dynasty. This is the Trump dynasty. It will never, ever be topped as long as we're alive. That's my opinion. And you mentioned, the Supreme Court decisions and how did it make our democracy stronger or did it make it weaker? No, it didn't make our democracy stronger, Jeff. It made our constitutional republic stronger. People seem to forget that. We don't have a democracy here. That's communism. We're not about communism. But, Jeff, like I said, you get tired of winning. The Democrats, they have nothing left, Jeff. And we know how the Democrats get when they got nothing left. They get even more desperate than what they are right now. And that concerns me, Jeff, and the well-being of my president.
Well, that's a very interesting point. Mark, I've got to ask you really two questions. Do you think there's exhaustion setting in for the Democrats, the media, and the left? And what I mean by that is, how many times, in how many ways, can you keep screaming, dictator, 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 and eventually, it's like crying wolf. After a while, just nobody believes you. I mean, we're still here. We're still holding elections. No one's being thrown in gulags. No one's constitutional rights are being violated. There's no one-party state being imposed. Opponents aren't being jailed or shot or imprisoned. They're still holding their No Kings protests and all these protests. And if you live in a dictatorship, they ban those. You get thrown in jail. You can't speak out against the dictator. You can't protest against the dictator. So what I'm saying is, after a while, is this just going to exhaust itself? Or are we seeing, in a sense, almost the end of the Democrats? Or I think what you're insinuating, do you think now they've said, look, we've tried to stop him every way possible. There's only one way left. We tried it once before in Butler, Pennsylvania. We may have to try it again. What say you?
They will try it again. They will try it for a third time, a fourth time, a fifth time, no matter how long it takes until Trump is not here anymore. And you know what? They need to start investigating those things because they're plotting it. But to answer your question, is it exhausted? Are they exhausted? Their tank, Jeff, is almost empty. They're running on fumes. Andrew Cuomo's brother, what's his first name? He has his own show.
Chris Cuomo.
Chris Cuomo. Did you hear what he said yesterday? He basically told the Democrats to get their heads out of their asses and stop with this friggin' nonsense. Even Democrats, Jeff, are getting sick of Democrats.
Mark, as always, thank you very much for that call. 617-266-6868. Let me throw another super quick log on the fire. Amy Coney Barrett, ACB as she's now being called. A couple of decisions I was not happy with. Most of you were not happy with. People were saying she was almost becoming a female clone of Chief Justice John Roberts. This decision, holy shamoly. Holy shamoly. And I'm going to get into the details a little bit. I'm never in the history of the Supreme Court has a justice slapped down and just eviscerated another justice the way Amy Coney Barrett did Ketanji Brown Jackson. I mean, and when I say epic, this was for the ages. And I just want to say this. This is why conservatives like me were so excited about Amy Coney Barrett when Trump initially nominated her. Because this was the only Amy Coney Barrett we saw before she got on the high court. This was the Amy Coney Barrett at Notre Dame, in the classroom, in her previous writings. This is what I mean. This is like, yeah, now, almost like a female. Remember, she clerked for Scalia. So this was, we thought, yeah, we're getting a female Scalia. And we were just like, what's happened to her? Ever since she got on the Supreme Court, this is not the same woman. Far from it. This Amy Coney Barrett is the old Amy Coney Barrett. And honestly, I hope she stays this Amy Coney Barrett. Because I got to tell you, honestly, you got to give this woman her due. You read this opinion, it's flawless. It is it is devastating, it is historic, and it is flawless. And now look, remember, it's Supreme Court legalese. They have a tradition of civility and restraint. So by our standards, or by the standards of Congress or talk radio, you'd say, well, Jeff, come on, could have hit her even harder. No. The Supreme Court, they're very measured, very reasoned, very sober, very restrained in how they, even if they disagree with one another, it's very scholarly, very much at a high level. This was the judicial equivalent. She went for Ketanji Brown Jackson's throat. There's no other way to put it. 617-266-6868. James in Lowell. Thanks for holding, James, and welcome. Did we lose James? All right, let's go to Joe in Abington. Thanks for holding, Joe, and welcome.
Jeff, I woke up with a question, but I forgot to see what you guys were talking about, but it's a very good question. And it regards the New York City mayoral race. And I don't know what the guy's first name is.
Zoran Mamdani is his name.
Yes, and I have a question that could change that election. And just because I know you watch the news, that's why I love your show. You watch all the news outlets so that I don't have to. You're up late at night. So the question was, has anyone asked that Zoran, should Iran have the bomb? Was Trump justified? And he said so many radical things. He might say the political thing, well, I think I think Trump was appropriate. I doubt he would say that. What do you think?
Oh, no, he's been asked already. I can tell you his answer. His answer is he's against the bombing. He's against the bombing. And then when you ask him point blank, should Iran get the bomb, he doesn't answer the question. He tries to dance around the question. Just like when you ask him to condemn, you ask him to condemn Hamas, he will not condemn Hamas. He has rapped for Hamas. He has supported Hamas. Even the forget Iran getting the bomb. He has been asked multiple times by reporters, do you condemn the Holocaust? Oh, come on, it's a slam dunk. I mean, just say yeah. Yeah. That's all you have to say. Yes. He refuses to condemn the Holocaust. No, he wants Iran to get the bomb. He's a Shia Muslim. I don't want to get too sidetracked here, Joe, but he is a Shiite Muslim. His religious holy land is Iran. He takes his religious instructions from the Ayatollah. To him, you ask him, what is the motherland for you, your religious motherland? And he would say, oh, no, it's the Ayatollahs. It's Tehran. So he's a communist. He's an Islamist. He is an he's a Jew hater. He's an anti-Semitic Jew hater. That's pretty obvious. And if this guy comes anywhere near power in New York will fall. Look, he just came out again over the weekend with that smirk of his, saying he will, quote unquote, fight ICE like hell. He goes, I'll fight ICE. If I'm mayor, I am not going to allow ICE to come in and deport illegals. I'm not. Now, Trump's response would be, I'm cutting off all federal funding. Rogue judges have blocked Trump with these nationwide injunctions. They can't do that anymore. So if Trump wants to withhold funding or grants from sanctuary cities like New York, he can do it. And let's see how tough Mamdani is then. That's why, again, this ruling is so important. Because now it really gives Trump the opportunity to start mass deportations, secure the border, and start enacting the policies he was elected to enact. But make no mistake about it, Joe, I'm telling you, the election of Mamdani as the Democrat nominee for mayor is a watershed. We're going to look back on this moment and say that's when the radical left completely took over the Democratic Party. And they've now gone full communist, full Islamist. It's a Muslim communist who openly hates America and the Jews. The Democratic Party is now an anti-Semitic party. It is an anti-American party. There's no question now. There's no question. And the media, by the way, did you see Paul Sperry's piece on Real Clear Politics to everybody? I'm going to try to get Paul Sperry on. You got to hear this because you won't believe it. According now to Paul Sperry, and he has the receipts. Listen to this. Do you know who was Zoran Mamdani's one of his top campaign contributors? This is CNN. I swear to you, CNN was one of the top contributors to Zoran Mamdani's campaign. Now, what the hell is a media outlet doing? Funding the campaign of any political candidate, okay? That should be so freaking... First of all, it's incredibly unethical. But that should be so illegal, it's not even funny, okay? That should be so criminal, it's not even funny. But of all the candidates to fund, this is the guy you fund? You found, if it's possible, the most radical leftist, the most anti-Semitic, anti-Jew, anti-Israel, anti-American, left-wing nut job you could find. And you send him money? By the way, their company's CNN's going down the tubes. Their ratings have they've hit bottom basement. Okay? They're in the gutter. And you're still pumping money to political candidates? So, no, I'm telling you right now, they've gone all in. So we'll see what happens in November. Trump was asked about him repeatedly over the weekend. He says he's going to do everything possible to try to prevent him from becoming mayor. But he says if he becomes mayor, he goes, I'm telling you, he blocks ICE, we're going to arrest him. So we'll see what happens. But make no mistake about it, Mamdani is a very dangerous man. And the fact now, he cannot be protected by these rogue judges. So he's going to lose a lot of funding if this guy tries to block ICE. And he's vowed to block ICE. 617-266-6868. Scott in Weymouth. Thanks for holding, Scott, and welcome.
Jeff, good morning. It has been a while. And,
Hi, Scott.
What an honor it is to be in your show, sir. I couldn't mean that more earnestly. Just two quick takes. Yes, who else would we rather have in power right now? As the world is unraveling, for lack of a better phrase, and pessimistically before our eyes, is there anyone you would rather have in power than President Donald J. Trump? Me personally, absolutely not. I sleep well at night. Him in concert with our military, I feel like I'm in good hands. And the main reason I picked up the phone this morning to call you, Jeff, is there's no one else I want their opinion on. I have an interesting prediction, and I hope I'm wrong, but I have a feeling Israel isn't done with Iran. I think they respectfully backed off when President Trump told them to, basically the F word. You obviously remember that. I think I don't think Israel is going to stop until there's a regime change, because we don't know that their nuclear threat has been abolished. We don't know that. We think so. We don't know. And I think Israel, and they don't mess around. Israel's military doesn't mess around. They're not playing games. Their livelihood, their existence is at stake. And I think that they are going to go it alone. Excuse the noise. I'm outside traffic here. Okay.
Well, Scott, look, it's a very important question. I'm going to answer it on the other side. Okay, I don't want to get too sidetracked. I want to stay on the Supreme Court decision, but it goes to the historic, say, last 7 or 10 days that Trump has had and the incredible role that he's on, which is Scott and Weymouth asked just before the break, do you think Israel needs to go back in there and finish the job, i.e. take out the Ayatollahs? Well, soon they may have no choice. And this is what happened over the weekend. Everybody, you need to hear this. So, the Grand Supreme Ayatollah, not Khamenei himself, but sort of one of the top clerics in Iran, who's a big supporter of Khamenei, but he runs the council that essentially runs Iran. Okay, in a nutshell. The Grand Supreme Ayatollah has now issued a fatwa. Basically, it's a death sentence, a religious edict on both President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. And in that fatwa over the weekend, he has now ordered, it's an order, it's an edict, it's a religious duty, an obligation. He has now ordered every Muslim in the world to assassinate and kill Trump and to assassinate and kill Bibi. And by the way, this is the exact same fatwa that was issued against Salman Rushdie. Remember him, the novelist, the satanic verses? And they've tried, 3 or 4 times to kill him? And a couple years ago in New York, they badly hurt him. He's blinded in one eye. They almost killed him. And basically had to live underground for most of his life. So the exact same fatwa that they issued against Salman Rushdie is what they've issued against Trump. And according now to the Ayatollahs, again, this is a religious edict, a religious commandment. They say that anyone who kills Trump or Bibi will be considered, quote unquote, a warrior for Allah. Which means if you die in the process, you will not just get eternal salvation and peace in heaven, but the 72 virgins. I'm not kidding. You get everything. You get eternal peace, eternal salvation, eternal happiness, and you get the 72 virgins thrown in as well. It's essentially a declaration of war, a declaration of religious war. It's a jihad. And so, as I said on X yesterday, and I want to repeat it, I want all of you to think about this. The Ayatollahs would be dead. The supreme leader would be a dead man right now. Bibi and the Israelis knew exactly which bunkers they were in. They were in a suburb in Tehran. And he wanted to take out all of them, all the Ayatollahs, just take them out. And it was Trump who said, don't do that. You're going to decapitate the regime. We'll have nobody to negotiate with. It could throw the country into anarchy, into chaos. And so literally, they would be dead now if it wasn't for President Trump. And this is how they pay us back? This is their gratitude for saving their lives? Putting a bounty on Trump's head? And of course, Bibi's head? And as I said, Israel should have just been allowed to finish the job, man. I mean, these people are unbelievable. They're sick, they're scum, they're evil, they're vile. But the point is, now Trump, for the rest of his life, is going to be living now under the sword of Damocles. He's going to be living now under the threat of Islamist terrorists directed by Tehran, saying it is now a religious duty and obligation to murder him and his family. That's why Scott said you think the Israelis are going to finish it. These mullahs may give them no choice. I mean, if you're putting bounties on the heads of the free world and the head of the state of Israel, pretty much you're taking a lot of options off the table. It's getting to the point, it's getting there. Either we take you out or you take us out. And we're not going to let you take us out. Anyway, so that's the answer to your question, Scott. I think Israel eventually will take them out because these mullahs, again, their evil knows no bounds. Now, as for these radical left-wing judges, their evil knows no bounds. And I know I touched on this, earlier, but you got to read parts of this Supreme Court decision. I have never, ever seen anything like this. It was authored by Amy Coney Barrett. There were 5 other justices that agreed with her. 3 liberals dissented. The key dissent, however, came from Ketanji Brown Jackson. And if you remember, she was the one during her nomination hearings that couldn't define what a woman is. Was asked repeatedly, well, can you just define a biological woman? And she's like, no, that's not within my purview. They're like, you can't define a woman. No, I refuse to define a woman. I can't define a woman. Okay, this is the intellectual caliber of what we're dealing with. This is how stupid this woman is. And remember, Biden picked her because, in his words, the only 2 qualifications he was looking for, only 2. Person had to be black, person had to be a woman. That's it. That's it. If you're a black person and you happen to be a woman, the plumbing is right, then you're in. You're in. Now, even if you just went with black women, there were many more qualified women than her. But he went with her. Now, in her dissent, this is key now, she literally takes the slogan, from the No Kings protest, and says, this decision will make the president a king. This decision takes the United States, and the majority is now culpable. So she's saying the Supreme Court majority, the 6 justices voting, to stop these nationwide injunctions, are literally putting the United States on the road to a king-like tyranny. She's accusing the other 6 justices of killing democracy and enabling Trump to become a tyrant, a dictator, a king, whatever you want to call him. Now, never in the history of the Supreme Court has someone leveled that kind of a vicious, frankly stupid, utterly ignorant, but nasty ad hominem attack. And so Amy Coney Barrett, with the full support of all the other justices, gave her rebuttal. If they didn't want her to include the words that Amy Coney Barrett did and put in the text, they would have told her to. They wanted her. Now I'm going to read it after this break, and I want to get your take. She went as far as you can possibly go. Okay, before I get into this, by Supreme Court standards, trust me, this was like a cage match. Okay, like a judicial legal cage match by Supreme Court standards. But before I get into this, Amy Coney Barrett versus Ketanji Brown Jackson slaughter. That's what it was. I mean, just a smackdown. I want to ask all of you. It is the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's Quality Siding, Roofing, and Windows. Do you think activist left-wing judges will abide by the Supreme Court's historic ruling? In other words, yes, they've been reined in. Yes, their individual power to issue nationwide injunctions has been severely limited by the Supreme Court, no question. But will they abide by it? A, yes. B, no. I want to hear from you. You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, KUHN as in national ER. You can also vote via X. Again, I was very active on X. My handle there, all one word, at the Kuhner Report, KUHN as in national ER, at the Kuhner Report. Obviously, I hope the answer is yes. They're duty bound, they're legally bound to abide by the Supreme Court. But knowing them, I think some will not, which means then they should be arrested. Enough is enough. How many times do you have to have the Supreme Court rule against you? 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, so here it is. Ketanji Brown Jackson, as I pointed out, did something that's never been done before. She literally took slogans from protests, anti-Trump protests, and just threw them into her dissent. And one of the big ones was this mindless slogan from the No Kings protests of a couple weeks ago, if you remember that. And so she went on about, well, if these judges can't issue nationwide injunctions, universal injunctions against against Trump's policies, then as she put it, this majority, i.e. the 6 who are voting, who are on the side of the majority in the opinion, this 6 now are enabling Trump down the path to now becoming, quote, a king, a tyrant, or a dictator. So she's accusing these justices of being toadies to tyranny, of essentially, according to her, you are betraying democracy, according to Ketanji Brown Jackson, and you are now enabling and empowering the rise of a Hitler, the rise of a king, the rise of a tyrant. Now, Amy Coney Jackson did something that is rarely done. Again, I want to stress this. By your standards, my standards, the standards of talk radio or of Congress or what you see on cable news, this is tame stuff, what you're going to hear. For the Supreme Court, it's unheard of. Because the Supreme Court, the basis of the Supreme Court is that it must be reasoned, measured, the language itself has to be scholarly, that even though there are deep issues that divide the country, even if you agree or disagree, the Supreme Court is supposed to show the way that you can, have a good faith argument. So the Supreme Court never makes a personal attack or criticism. The Supreme Court never specifically mentions a certain or rarely mentions a specific justice and then just goes after them hard. This was, by Supreme Court standards, this was brutal. This was the equivalent of Amy Coney Barrett throwing haymaker after haymaker after haymaker against Ketanji Brown Jackson. And I'm telling you, it was a beautiful thing to behold. So here is what she wrote in part of the majority opinion. Quote, so she's now dealing with her ridiculous arguments supporting these nationwide injunctions. It's going to lead to tyranny, dictatorship, an imperial executive, as she calls it, an imperial presidency. We will not, this is what Amy Coney Barrett writes, we will not dwell on Justice Jackson's argument, which is at odds with more than 2 centuries worth of precedent, not to mention the Constitution itself. We observe only this. Justice Jackson decries an imperial executive while embracing an imperial judiciary. Boom. I mean, boom. So what she's saying is, you're flagrantly ignoring the Constitution. What you're arguing is against 200 years of precedent. Basically, she's saying, you're just making this up as you go along. Okay? That's already a smack. But then she says, yeah, you're going on about this imperial executive, this supposed dictatorship. Well, what you really want is judicial tyranny. What you're really embracing here, and you should be ashamed of yourself, is, quote, an imperial judiciary. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, she then goes on to describe, I mentioned the Judiciary Act of 1789, okay, which is where they designed the judicial system and what a judge's role is and the oath he's supposed to follow. She then writes this. She says, as she lays out the Judiciary Act of 1789 and the impact it had on our judiciary going on for over 100 years, she then says to Jackson, quote, Justice Jackson skips over that part about the Judiciary Act of 1789, about what judges were historically told what to do and what not to do, what their proper limits are. And then she says, because analyzing the governing statute, meaning the Judiciary Act of 1789, involves boring legalese. Now, I mean, every Supreme Court watcher said, you don't understand. What Barrett is essentially saying, as far as she can say within the framework of the Supreme Court, is that Ketanji Brown Jackson is literally too stupid, too dumb, too mentally lazy to understand basic constitutional law. That, did you even read our opinion? Do you even know what our opinion says? That's what she's saying. Like, in other words, this is clearly above your head. And you're so mentally lazy, you can't even take the effort to read the paragraphs that we've inserted about the Judiciary Act of 1789. She's essentially calling her a DEI hire. And she's saying all this with the full support of the other 5 concurring justices. So, the majority are basically calling Ketanji Brown Jackson, forgive me, an idiot. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, very, very quickly. Listen now to Jonathan Turley on Fox. He's their legal analyst, saying, look, you want to know why they really smacked down Ketanji Brown Jackson? I mean, by Supreme Court standards, they just slapped her in the face and then slapped her again and then just like slap, 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 slap. They're getting tired of the histrionics and the hysteria. They're sick of it. Everything is a threat to democracy. Everything is the coming of a dictatorship. They said it for 4 years the first time. They've been saying it for the last couple years. They've been saying it for the last 6 months. Like, really, your act is getting boring and, frankly, stupid and juvenile. Roll cut 27, Mike.
As you noted, the opinion was really radioactive in this takedown of Justice Jackson. It's rare. I've been covering the Supreme Court for decades. It's rare to see that type of exchange. The important thing to remember is that Justice Barrett delivered what was essentially a pile driver, but she didn't do it alone. I mean, her colleagues signed on to this, and I think it's very clear that the majority is getting tired of the histrionics and the hysteria that seems to be growing a bit on the left side of the court. But this was really an astonishing takedown by the justice.
No, there's no question. To me, he says rare. To me, it's unheard of. But, he's a court watcher. I don't know. Maybe you can point to another example or two. But to me, this is unheard of. And look, it's not just that she said it. It's that she said it in the majority opinion, which means the other 5 agree with her. They signed on to this. If they didn't like a certain phrase or a certain personal attack, they would have removed it. But they kept it in. So this is what's happening now on the Supreme Court. The 6 who voted in favor of this ruling are telling Ketanji Brown Jackson, not even behind closed doors now, but to her face, in public, in a ruling, in front of the whole world, you're an idiot. That's what they're telling her. You're a woke idiot. And that you're clearly unqualified to be a Supreme Court justice. You don't know what you're talking about. You're ignorant of the Constitution. You make stuff up as you go along. And you're literally now an activist on the high court. You're no different than the No Kings protesters. You're just taking cheap sloganeering and just throwing it into Supreme Court decisions. You're out of your league. You're out of your depth. You're a diversity, equity, inclusion, a DEI hire who never should have been installed on the Supreme Court. I'm telling you, that's what they're essentially telling her to her face. And I think she's so stupid. Again, this is a woman that can't define what a woman is. I think even this is going above her head. Like, she may be the worst Supreme Court justice we've ever had. And that's saying something. So this ruling is historic for many, many reasons. What it's now shown is there's a chasm, an ideological chasm on the Supreme Court. And the 6 have now told the 3, not only are you wrong, but they've told one of the 3, you're an embarrassment. You're an embarrassment. That's how bad your reasoning is. Now, quickly, I want to play one more cut, then I want to go back to the phone lines. 617-266-6868. Another dissenting liberal justice, Moonbat, was Elena Kagan. Okay? Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson were the 3 dissenting voices, the 3 dissenting justices. Now, you want to see what a bunch of phonies and frauds and hypocrites, liberals and leftists are. In 2022, at Northwestern University, so we're talking just 3 years ago, not 10 years, not 20, not 30, just 3 years ago, this was when Biden, Joey, Dementia Joe, was technically president, okay? And there were some conservative judges that were blocking things that Biden was trying to do, like student loan forgiveness, for example. And then liberals fumed. How dare you issue a nationwide injunction? How dare you block Joey? And so, in an interview at Northwestern University, listen now to what Elena Kagan said. Can you say hypocrite? This was her just 3 short years ago. Roll cut 24. Mike.
That can't be right, that one district court, whether it's in the Trump years, people used to go to the Northern District of California. And in the Biden years, they go to Texas. And it just can't be right that one district judge can stop a nationwide policy in its tracks and leave it stopped for the years that it takes to go through normal process.
It's not right. It's not right. It's just, no. One district court judge, one low-level judge, say in California, can block President Trump, or one low-level judge in Texas can block Biden. It's just not right. And this has got to stop. That was then, this is now. You phony, you fraud, you. And it just goes to show you, liberals and Democrats always want to change the rules when it suits their political objectives. If Biden is in power, injunctions are bad. They're bad because it blocks Joey and what the Democrats want to do. Trump is in power, injunctions are great because it stops the dictator. It's part of la resistance, the resistance. That's why these liberal justices are a constitutional, legal, judicial joke. Okay? They're a joke. Trump just broke them again. Agree, disagree. 617-266-6868 is the number. Jake in Gloucester. Thanks for holding, Jake, and welcome.
Jeff, it's been a while.
Go ahead, Jake. The floor is yours, my friend.
Jeff, besides calling out that stupid Justice Jackson, I knew when she said she didn't know what a woman was, we knew she didn't belong in the Supreme Court. She just never did. She's a DEI appointee, obviously part of the globalists, and it's just a disgrace. But call out big time that big phony hypocrite Kagan, who 2.5 years ago says we can't have these district court judges making national injunctions. They don't belong. That's not their statute. And she votes all the time with these district court injunctions. And she did this time. And of course, she's quiet. She's not saying a word because she was outed on Fox News in late 2022 when the court ruled against Biden. And now she's all in favor of the district court judges ruling against Trump. How much more do we think that these Supreme Court judges are so intelligent, so smart? People like Jackson, Kagan, Sotomayor, she might even be the lowest IQ judge on the Supreme Court because she always votes against any Republican court decision, any conservative decision. But Jackson is an outright doofus. And I hope, Jeff, that it doesn't continue. I'll tell you what, I just watched Fox News. You know who Jason Chavez is? He just wrote a book. They're still coming for us. It's going out tomorrow nationally. And he says these Supreme Court, these district court judges are not going to stop. They're going to continue to issue national injunctions, even though the Supreme Court has said they're illegal, basically. But Alito warned us, Jeff. If you saw the actual decision, Alito warned us. We had to go a step further, 2 steps further, and outright ban these injunctions. But he said we didn't do that. And could you explain exactly what Alito meant? Because I didn't see the whole decision. He did warn us. This is not the end. It's going to continue. There's a problem. There's some problem with that court decision. It's not going to come down until October as far as the birthright citizenship, I believe. But there was another thing Alito said, which I'm not sure about. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, yeah, no, Jake, look, Alito, and I think he's right. Well, in some ways, I think he's right. Alito basically is saying, look, you have these activist judges who don't care about their oath, who don't care about the Constitution or precedent or what the intention of any act or statute was or is, like the Judiciary Act of 1789. They don't care. But they don't care. They're there to make policy. That's what they think they're there for, which is, again, a violation of separation of powers. If you want policy enacted, you pass it through Congress. You get elected. They think, no, they need to enact national policy. And they are so drunk. And by the way, Alito says that is a dagger aimed at the heart of the rule of law, because that's classic judicial tyranny. And our founding fathers warned us, we cannot have that. That would be death to our republic. And so Alito is telling everybody they're not going to stop because we don't have a mechanism to stop them. We don't have a mechanism to enforce our rulings. Now, this is where the Department of Justice is going to be absolutely seminal, pivotal, indispensable. Pam Bondi is going to have the courage and the spine the next time an activist judge issues a nationwide injunction and says, you just violated the Supreme Court, baby. Excuse me. If it's a gentleman, sir, if it's a woman, ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me, sir. You just violated the Supreme Court. We're done with this garbage. You're now being kicked off the bench. You're going to be disrobed, and you're going to go to jail. This is going to come with serious consequences. If she doesn't, they are going to continue to enact these nationwide injunctions. Now, what I think is going to happen is Trump is going to counter now by waiving this decision, Trump v. CASA, as it's called. So he's going to waive the Trump v. CASA decision like this and say, you don't have the power to do that. The Supreme Court shot you down. The Supreme Court has blocked you. So you know what? I'm going to ignore anything that you say. What are you going to do? Hold me in contempt? Good luck. Good luck. Because we'll just appeal to the Supreme Court and you'll lose every time. So what you're going to see now is a continuing of the battle of wills. But now Trump, pardon the pun, he holds the trump card. He now has this decision. And from this point forward, the Supreme Court is bound by its own decision. So, yes, they're going to continue to issue nationwide, or they're going to try to, universal injunctions. But if Pam Bondi and Trump hold the line and don't break and don't retreat and don't cave, all they got to do now is go after these judges, impeach these judges, arrest these judges, and ignore these judges. If they do that, there's nothing they can do to stop them. Like, enough is enough. Look, Jake, I can't believe this. I remember growing up. I don't want to sound like, back in my day. A ruling from the Supreme Court was a ruling from the Supreme Court. Now, if you don't like the Supreme Court or the composition of the Supreme Court, like we did after Roe v. Wade, you elect a president, i.e., say Ronald Reagan, and say whenever there's a Supreme Court opening, get a conservative justice to replace a liberal justice. And eventually, over time, you'll get a ruling that's favorable to you. But this idea that, well, the Supreme Court, to hell with the Supreme Court, we're going to keep doing what we want to do, coming from judges? Judges are supposed to follow the Supreme Court. There's a hierarchy, a food chain, a pecking order. The Supreme Court's at the top. They're at the bottom. This idea that a judge would say, to hell with the Supreme Court. They don't make I make policy. To hell with their rulings. That's unheard of. Professionally, you'd be considered a national joke. They would laugh you out of the courtroom. You would be ashamed. You would be embarrassed. It just wouldn't be done. Like, seriously, it's like going to a funeral naked. No, really, like without any clothes. Or going to a wedding naked. Like, No one's going to arrest you, but it's just not done. Like, you're going to be considered an outcast, a pariah, a loser. Now, because they're not appointing judges anymore. Ketanji Brown Jackson is not a serious judge. Ketanji Brown, you know what she is? She's a female version of Al Sharpton. I'm telling you, that's what it's a black woman instead of a black man. They would have put Sharpton on the bench if they could. Oh, I promised a black woman. Okay, so let's get Ketanji. That's what she is. She's Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson in pantsuits. That's all. That's it. So you throw her on the bench, and they're saying, look, this woman doesn't know what she's talking about. She's there to make law and make policy. That's not the job of a judge. That's not the job of the judiciary. That's not the job of the Supreme Court. And that's what this ruling makes crystal clear. It's Congress and the president. Why? Because they're elected. And elected representatives, according to any constitutional republic, and frankly, any democracy. I don't care. Take your pick. The people's representatives make the laws, and they make policy, not unelected men and women in black robes. And that's why this decision is so monumental. And that's why the left is losing their mind. And all they can yell, their only rebuttal is, he's a dictator! He's a dictator! Do you know how stupid that is? Like, seriously. My parents came from an actual communist dictatorship. A real dictatorship. There was no food. There was no meat. There was no freedom. There was no liberty. They took our homes. They took our farm. They took everything my ancestors had. No problem. There was no opposition. You criticize the regime, they put you in jail. You stand up to them, they put you in jail. There was no heating. There was no energy. There was no electricity. The regime controlled everything. And just 2-3 weeks ago, again, I'm just going by what the media and the Democrats have said, they had this No Kings protest, which according to them was the largest, biggest protest in American history. That's what they said. In my parents' homeland, okay? Then Yugoslavia, but it's Croatia. Today, Croatia. That dictator, Tito, you raised your head against him, your hand, and you're dead or you're in some torture dungeon. You think any communist dictatorship, any dictatorship would allow people by the millions to go on the streets and protest them? You're on drugs. You're so stupid. Honestly, it's mind-boggling. But there they are, most of them a bunch of fat pigs, gorging at the trough, all making book deals on MSNBC and CNN, and they're yelling, dictatorship, 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 as they live in one of the freest countries in the world, with all the liberties and privileges that come with being an American. Honestly, it's disgusting. It's disgusting. Because you can't beat them at the polls. You can't beat them with policy. You can't beat them with ideas. And so now it's just smear, lie, hysteria, fearmonger, panic porn. And eventually, you see, it's like Joseph Goebbels, the big lie. You repeat a lie often enough, just by sheer repetition. And the uneducated masses, in this case the liberals, okay, moonbats, will believe it. And that's what they're trying to do. The problem is everybody looks around themselves and said, we've never been doing better. We've never been freer. What dictatorship? Like, what are these people talking about? It's honestly, it's pathetic and disgusting. 617-266-6868. Janice in Melrose. Thanks for holding, Janice, and welcome.
I just wanted to say that I think credit should go to the American Center for Law and Justice and Jay Sekulow for this ruling. They partnered with West Virginia, and Jay Sekulow said that a lot of things from his brief were quoted in the ruling. So I think they had a lot to do with that. Excuse me. Hello?
Yeah, no, Janice, you're completely right. Jay Sekulow has done incredible work, and I think he should be commended. Look, I got to tell you, it's a bit dry. I'm going to be honest with you. It's a bit, it's dry reading. It's a Supreme Court decision. But if you take the effort, unlike Ketanji Brown Jackson, if you take the effort to actually read it, first, it's a great history lesson, okay, on the law and the Constitution and the role of the judge and the design of our judicial system. It's a great history lesson. But you read this and you go, Amy Coney Barrett has a very powerful mind. Like this woman, this is the Amy Coney Barrett that we all thought we were going to get on the Supreme Court. So I agree with you. Jay Sekulow deserves a lot of credit. But Amy Coney Barrett, honestly, I tip my hat off.
Yeah, okay. I had one other thing about Pam Bondi. I heard another host say that he had a conversation with a senator who said that she fired a lot of people in the beginning.
Yeah, she fired 3 of these deranged J6 prosecutors. Winning. And so, as I said in my opening monologue, and it bears repeating, you go back now, say the last week, 10 days, Trump is now on a roll, on a winning streak, the likes that very few presidents in American history have ever seen. Just think about it. He now has obliterated, absolutely destroyed Iran's nuclear weapons program, now guaranteeing for at least a couple years, peace in the region, peace for America, and peace for the world. An historic achievement. Obama gave the mullahs billions of dollars to put them on the path towards the bomb. Trump has eliminated the threat of the bomb. Just think about that. On top of that, President Trump went to NATO at the NATO summit and did something that is absolutely historic. Reagan couldn't do it. Bush 41, Clinton, W, Obama, Biden, presidents going back frankly, all the way back to Eisenhower and Truman have been urging European members of NATO, the European countries, to start paying their fair share, to not completely have the United States over and over again pick up the overwhelming majority, the bulk of the burden. Well, guess what? He did the impossible. He achieved the unachievable. He got every single NATO member, with the exception of socialist Spain, outside of the socialists in Spain, who are running that government right now. Every single other member has agreed to increase their defense military spending to 5% of gross domestic product. GDP, 5%. 5. Well, Jeff, what does that mean? That means that NATO now is going to have an extra $1 trillion with a T infused into their military budget. He now has made NATO a military defense juggernaut. Juggernaut. But that wasn't enough. As I said, winning. You had this historic Supreme Court decision, which now has severely limited and restrained the power of individual judges to make national policy and to invoke or to impose nationwide universal injunctions, thereby freeing up the executive branch, freeing up Congress, and restoring constitutional government. The days of rogue judges blocking the president or blocking Congress are now over. Over. It is a massive blow to judicial tyranny and judicial supremacy. And now we come to the big, beautiful bill. I'm going to continue to take calls, I promise, but there are major developments now on the big, beautiful bill, which will be the signature achievement of Trump's second term and will give the Republicans now massive ammunition to run on in the midterm elections next year. Saturday night, vote 51 to 49. The Republicans agreed, they voted to advance the big, beautiful bill to a final vote. Now, Chuck Schumer tried, and I thought it was pathetic on his part, to force the clerk to read all of the 1,000 pages of the big, beautiful bill as a delaying tactic. They did it. It's not stopping the bill. Now they're going through what's called the amendments process. That should be over by probably late tonight, early tomorrow morning, paving the way for the Senate potentially now passing the bill, sending it to the House. Trump wants to sign the bill Friday, July 4th. That's his self-imposed deadline. Now, there have been some major developments on the big, beautiful bill front. 2 Republicans have now voted against the bill. They joined all 47 Democrats. Senator Rand Paul and that Judas from North Carolina, uber rhino Senator Tom Tillis. Tillis says he's a no. He's a no now. He's a no tomorrow. He is going to vote no, no matter what. No matter what. Ron Johnson from Wisconsin appeared to be a no as well. But at the 11th hour, after negotiations with J.D. Vance, and I've got to say this, if this bill is passed, someone should give J.D. Vance a medal. Because he's the one now who's been spearheading negotiations on behalf of Trump and the White House with a lot of Republican holdouts. Rick Scott, he flipped from a no to a yes. Mike Lee, J.D. flipped from a no to a yes. Cynthia Lumens, she's a Republican from Wyoming. He flipped from a no to a yes. Murkowski, he flipped her from a no to a yes. And he did it with Ron Johnson at the 11th hour, flipping him from a no to a yes. Vance was actually at the Capitol when the vote was being cast for fear it could be 50-50, and he would have to be the key deciding vote. So Vance has delivered so far beautifully, incredibly. But still, 2 Judas Republicans have voted no, and they say they will continue to vote no, no matter what. That means Trump only has a razor-thin majority. He could only lose 1 vote. That's it. He loses more than that, and the entire big, beautiful bill comes crashing down. Now, here is the question I have. To a scumbag like Tom Tillis, and as I said on X last night, Tillis is a Judas. He's always been an anti-Trumper. He's always been very soft and weak on the border. Never met a war he didn't like. He is in the pocket of the Chamber of Commerce and the globalists. And now for his 30 pieces of silver, he has now stabbed Trump and, more importantly, the American people right in the back. Right in the back. Because he bought the left-wing lie, the Democrat lie, that this bill cuts funding for rural areas, for hospitals, Medicaid funding, which is an absolute lie. It cuts funding for illegals, yes, For non-citizens, yes. For those who don't deserve to be on Medicaid, yes. 617-266-6868 is the number. So Trump has now scorched North Carolina Senator Tom Tillis after voting against advancing his big, beautiful bill in the Senate. You know, as I say, he's Judas Tillis now from this point forward. And so because of this, Trump said, we're going to find somebody to primary you. Like, I've had enough of grandstanding senators like you who stand for nothing except looking for cheap publicity, loved by the swamp, loved by the liberal media. I'm done with people like you. Backstabbers like you, I don't need. And so he said, we're going to find a primary challenger and we're going to take Tillis out. In less than 6 hours, Tillis went on social media and said, I'm retiring. I mean, he's going to serve out his term until 2026, but basically he's done. No mas. Because he knows he's going to get primaried and he's going to get destroyed. Now, the question I have for Tillis and for Rand Paul and for all the other Republican holdouts. So, what is it about the big, beautiful bill that you don't like? Is it what? That it's the biggest tax cut in American history? That it'll extend the Trump tax cuts? Is it what? No tax on overtime? No tax on tips? No? You don't like that? How about the fact that it completely rebuilds our military and rebuilds our Navy in particular to now be equal to that of China? No, you want China to have a superior Navy? You like that? You like it that China will have a stronger military than ours? You like that? That it will spend over $150 billion, not just on border security, not just on completing the wall, but this is the key part, on providing the manpower and resources necessary to deport millions and millions of illegals out of our country. Tom Homan was the one who said, I don't understand these senators. He goes, I don't understand them. We need the extra money and the funding to deport millions of illegals. So you want the invaders to stay? Because that's what it means if this bill goes down. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on. What I'm saying is this bill will unleash massive economic growth, higher wages for middle working class people. It will slash our taxes. It will completely rebuild our military. It will utterly secure the border and deport and repel the border invasion unleashed by Joe Biden. And Rand Paul wants to sink it? Tom Tillis now is going to, he wants to sink it so bad, he's basically ended his political career? This is the hill he wants to die on? That rhino loser? Ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay. We have to now deliver a message because we don't know when the vote is going to be. Okay, it's either going to be later tonight or tomorrow morning. If this bill goes down, every Republican that voted against it will go down in infamy. In infamy. We will never forget it. We will primary each and every one of them, but not just primary them. Their name is going to be mud. Their name is going to be toxic, radioactive. And let me just quickly say this about Tillis. Now he's getting his 30 pieces of silver. Because let me tell you what he's planning to do. Oh, he knows Trump hates him. And by the way, Tillis has always hated Trump. So this is payback. He's now been waiting to shiv him, waiting to stick that knife in. But he thinks now, by doing the bidding of his paymasters, and really he's owned lock, stock, and barrel. Okay, like I said, like a $10 streetwalker. He's owned by the Chamber of Commerce. He thinks, I'm going to do them a favor. I'm going to vote against this bill. And then after he's retired, quote unquote retired, he's going to get a gig as a lobbyist for one of these big lobbying firms in D.C. And that's where you make the big money, baby. Okay? I scratch you. Now I scratch your back. Now you scratch my back. Trump, MAGA, and every MAGA Republican should say, any lobbying firm that hires Tom Tillis, we will never do business with. You hire Tom Tillis, that Judas, as far as we're concerned, we won't even take your call. In other words, it's a death sentence hiring this guy. That's the message you have to send across the swamp. You're not going to make money anymore off of betraying the American people. And when Tillis realizes, ooh, there's no money here. In other words, Judas is not getting his 30 pieces of silver. Maybe they'll think twice before they betray the president and, more importantly, us. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868. Do you support the big, beautiful bill? Do you support Republicans passing in the Senate the big, beautiful bill? And I've got to ask you, all of you, Kuhner country, what do we do now with people like Rand Paul and Tom Tillis? Honestly, I'm sick of both of them. They just keep backstabbing us and backstabbing us and backstabbing us. Tillis has now been knocked out by Trump with the threat of a primary. Should we now primary Rand Paul? Is Trump right? Are these nothing more than treasonous grandstanders? 617-266-6868. Let's go right back to Janice in Melrose. Janice, you were talking about Jay Sekulow. I agreed with you. He worked ferociously hard. A lot of his work got incorporated in Amy Coney Barrett's majority opinion decision. Please pick up where you left off, Janice.
Well, I was making a comment about the Justice Department. I was listening to someone who was told by a senator that Pam Bondi is having a hard time replacing all of these people that she fired, and there were two reasons. One was the law schools are putting out far-left Marxists. A lot of them are. The second one is that a lot of these people that she's trying to hire are afraid to go after the left because they always retaliate with lawfare. And the senator gave an example of one man who was left with $1 million legal bill. So I don't know if this is true. I just heard someone say that he was told this by a senator, and I'm just wondering, when we complain about the Justice Department, maybe part of it is they don't have the staff, but I just wanted to bring that.
Well, I mean, I agree, Janice. Look, the left they're cutthroat. You can also text us 70470, and of course the Kuhner Man, always active on Messenger. And this is from Larry on Messenger. Jeff, Senator Tom Tillis is acting like McManiac, John McCain, with the thumbs down. Well, you remember McCain did that to Trump? He was going to be McCain was the deciding vote. They could have overturned and repealed Obamacare. And then he went to the well of the Senate to cast the die, as they say, the deciding vote. And then he turned around with that insane smile of his and went thumbs down like the Roman emperors and voted against repealing, even though he kept campaigning that he was going to repeal Obamacare and just sticking it to Trump. That's what Tom Tillis is. That's what rhinos do. And that's what Tom Tillis is now doing to President Trump. By the way, overwhelming majority of his constituents, the residents, the citizens of North Carolina, support the big, beautiful bill. So his voters, his constituents, want him to back it. But it doesn't matter. Money talks, baby. 617-266-6868. Thomas in Florida. Thanks for holding, Thomas, and welcome.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Thomas?
I've been thinking a lot about the media and the Smith-Mundt Act of 1947, which
Yes.
Obama adjusted to the Modernization Act.
Yes.
If that was repealed back to its original focus, then some of these media, legacy media people could be sued, and they think twice about spinning stuff. What do you think about that?
Oh, I completely agree with you. And let me tell you what the Smith-Mundt Act would have prevented right off the bat. Never mind, it would have prevented the lies about Russia collusion in the first term. It would have prevented the lies about the Hunter Biden laptop. There's no question. It would have prevented the lies about, even now, that Trump the bombing that Trump ordered did not obliterate Iran's nuclear program. I mean, our intelligence community now says it was obliterated. The Israeli intelligence community says it was obliterated. The mullahs themselves have admitted their program was set back many years. But they keep pushing these lies. And so all of this, you could sue and you would win. You would bankrupt them. But let me tell you, to me, what is unspeakable. And that's why I want to get Paul Sperry on the show. Real Clear Politics. He's one of the best investigative reporters in the country. CNN contributed to the campaign of that crazy Muslim communist in New York, Zohran Mamdani. So you have the media now literally writing checks, writing campaign checks to radical left-wing Democrats. I mean, first of all, it's grossly unethical. But I'm telling you, under the Smith-Mundt Act, that falls under propaganda. And you're not allowed to engage in propaganda. So, Thomas, you're not 100%. You're 1,000% correct. And see, this is the problem now. The media is lying. They know they're lying. They know that we know that they're lying. But they don't care. Because their mission is to brainwash and indoctrinate the people that watch them or listen to them or read them. Because their goal now is to destroy Trump at all costs. And that's why all they do now is lie, lie, lie. I mean, their lies are getting out. I mean, you can't get more pathetic than the lies now that they're propagating about Trump. Look, and I said this when he won the election. I said, remember now what they're predicting. This is going to be even bigger than the Russia hoax. They're predicting that we will never have another election again. I can play you clip after clip after clip. I can cite you article after article after article. Their claim is now that Trump is a dictator. This is Weimar Germany. And within 2 years, he will create sort of a fascist dictatorship. Now, we're going to have midterm elections next year. And we're going to have a new president in 2028. It'll either be J.D. Vance, who I think is going to be the Republican nominee, or whoever, or some crazy moonbat Democrat. So they're going to be proven wrong again, colossally wrong again. Now, I don't know how many times you can say things, predict things, state things, and be proven not just false, not just wrong, but literally propaganda, as the Russians would say. And you still have your broadcasting license? Literally, you're still allowed to be on the air? So what is this now? You keep telling people dictatorship is coming, dictatorship is coming, dictatorship is coming, and there's no dictatorship. After a while, we're not talking about a good faith effort at a story and the sourcing was a little off, and usually you make a correction. That's what newspapers used to do. Hey, we claimed this, turns out not to be true. Or we stated this, that was a factual error. No, They just keep deliberately misleading, deceiving, and manipulating the American people. There's got to be consequences to pay. Because you want to talk about a threat to our quote-unquote democracy. As Trump said, the media is the enemy of the people. Thomas, final word to you.
Okay, I guess it's more of a question. What can the administration do to reverse what Obama did in 2013?
Well, Trump can. I've been pushing this very hard. He can restore the Smith-Mundt Act, and the Republicans could restore it by legislation. See, and look, they can do this, and this would be like a silver bullet. It would end everything. The problem is, and this is what look. Take Tom Tillis. By the way, you think Rand Paul would vote for that? No. I'm sorry. The more I see of Rand Paul, yeah, he's a libertarian, and I think he does make good points. I'm not saying he's not a stupid man, far from it. But man, the guy, he's got the spine of a jellyfish. There are so many traitors and, and weasels and scoundrels and literally people on the take within the Republican establishment. You can't trust them as far as you can throw them. And look at Tillis. I mean, would Tillis vote to restore the Smith-Mundt Act? No. And I don't want to linger on Tillis, but, he issues his resignation letter. So Trump says we're going to primary this guy. Within 6 hours, he's resigning. And you got to see the letter. Thomas, it goes on and on and on. But let me tell you what stands out. He states that his greatest achievements, that the thing he's most proud of for all the years he's been in the Senate is, quote, bipartisan achievements, compromises with the other side. And what were these, quote unquote, bipartisan compromises and achievements? It's always spending our taxpayer money. I swear. We spent so much money on mental health. I'm so proud of that. We spent so much on infrastructure. I'm so proud of that. Literally, I can read to you his resignation letter. It was bipartisan. I always wanted to reach out across the aisle. That's why I'm hated. And I'm like, look at these scumbag politicians. So what you're most proud of, what you think was so honorable, is that you spent trillions of dollars of our money, taxpayer money. That's what you're patting yourself on the back for? Notice, these scumbag swamp politicians, notice, they never ever say, I preserved this constitutional right. I defended the Constitution from this attack or this assault. Hell, I cut taxes for my constituents or for the American people. I put more money in their pocket. I lessened their tax burden. Nope. This is a Republican from a red state that Trump carried 3 times. And his shtick is, I spent like a drunken sailor, and I did it with the Democrats. That's what I'm most proud of. I'm a whore. I'm Tom Tillis. And I can be bought for 30 pieces of silver. That's the problem. You go in for the Smith-Mundt Act, you're not going to believe how many of these Republican Judases are going to stab you in the back. That's why I'm happy he's resigning, and let's get a real MAGA senator to represent North Carolina, and eventually we'll have enough MAGA people in the House and the Senate that we can start passing real legislation and restore the Smith-Mundt Act. In other words, people that really want to play to win, not just to go along, to get along, and line their pockets. Thomas, thank you very much for that call. 617-266-6868. Going into politics, whether it's Democrat or Republican, it's about getting rich. Did you see the latest on Paul Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi's husband? He's now worth, it just came out over the weekend, He's now worth over $450 million. Okay, let's not quibble. It's 458. Nearly $500 million. Paul Pelosi. And you know how he did it? Trading. Day trading on the stock market. And as many financial experts and financial journalists have said, the guy's got an incredible, perfect record. They go, we've never seen anything like this. This guy, for whatever reason, seems to have the magic touch. He's always picking the right stock. He's never bought a bad stock in his entire life. It's almost statistically impossible. Even the best Wall Street geniuses occasionally will pick a bad stock and lose a little bit of money here or lose a little bit of money there. This guy, it's a perfect record. Every freaking stock that he's bought, up, up, up. It's all insider trading. Pelosi tells him what's going to be in a bill before it's in the bill, and he goes and he buys low and then he sells high. It's pure insider trading. And that's how Pelosi has become basically almost a $500 million. She's an oligarch. I'm just giving the Pelosi's as an example. So, you know, a guy like Tom Tillis, what is a guy like Tom Tillis going to do? Sell life insurance? What's he going to do? Sell Encyclopedia Britannicas? That's all, I'm telling you, that's all he's good for. No, you get into politics. It's like a license to print money. And then you just whore yourself out. And that's what he's done his entire career. So he's not there to serve the people. By the way, he did nothing for all those North Carolinians devastated by Hurricane Helene. As Trump rightly said in his Truth Social, he goes, you know, I pick up the phone. Where's Tom Tillis? He's never there. He's never there. He's at the Capitol Grill Steakhouse. I know where Tom Tillis is. He's shoving a steak down his throat and a bottle of wine. That's where, and talking to his donors. That's Tommy Tillis. That's good old Tommy. That's where, good old boy Tommy. That's where he is. And Trump said, I'm down there breaking my butt, working my butt off, examining the damage, getting as much money in there, relief as possible, and I can't get Tom Tillis on the phone. So he never cared for his residents, his voters, his constituents. He's about Tommy Tillis. And now he's just stuck it right to Trump. 617-266-6868. And by the way, now the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, they love him. Oh, profiles in courage. The North Carolina Maverick, Tom Tillis, goes out on a high. So he thinks now he's going to be the darling of the swamp and the darling of the Beltway. And he thinks he's going to get a big lobbying contract out of it. That's why I'm saying cut him off at the knees. Anybody hires him, we never do business with you again. I see his name anywhere associated with the lobbying firm, we don't even take your call. In other words, it's time to send a message. The days of getting rich in Washington are over. 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. Jay on the South Shore. Thanks for holding, Jay, and welcome.
Jeffrey.
Jay, how are you?
Doing well, doing well. Just want to make a comment, and then I had a question. These scumbag politicians, media personalities, and these judges especially, I think what Trump should start doing is drop off a busload of migrants right in their neighborhood and maybe find out where their vacation homes are, drop them off there, give them a backpack and a tent, and tell them to make themselves at home. And we'll see how long that lasts. And then my question, Jeff, as it relates to the big, beautiful bill, all along I heard about no tax on Social Security. And, you know, we're getting to the age that that's the only thing that would benefit me. And now you don't hear a thing about no taxes on Social Security. What happened? You know?
Well, yeah, no, the lobbyists got involved on that. You're gonna be able to deduct some of your Social Security to not be taxed. I think it keeps changing in the bill, but it's going to be about $4,000 ballpark. Don't quote me on the exact figure because they keep changing it. So basically about $4,000 you can deduct from being taxed. But no, I supported the initial promise. I don't know why seniors or the elderly, people who are 65 and above, always have to take it on the chin. Why should they pay tax on their Social Security? They've paid taxes their whole life. The money was deducted from their paycheck. So as far as I'm concerned, they've already been taxed. This is double taxation. And at least, it's not much to live on to begin with. Well, at least let them live on, you know, the actual Social Security check. But no, they got to tax that as well. I'm sorry, it's outrageous. It's outrageous. It's wrong. And I would hope, and I'm praying, that when this thing goes back to the House, that Trump picks up the phone and tells House Speaker Mike Johnson, no tax on overtime for people, working class people, check, good. No tax on tips for bartenders, waiters, waitresses, servers, check. They deserve it. But I don't see it for people on Social Security. I want it for people on Social Security, period. Well, it'll raise the deficit and the debt even more. I don't care. I made a promise. I'm going to keep that promise. Put the no tax on Social Security back in the bill. But they just kept nibbling away and nibbling away and nibbling away. And, I mean, I don't want to give you all the, you know, inside baseball and bore you. But what happened was the rhinos in the Northeast, New York in particular, pushed for what they called a huge increase in the cap on SALT, the state and local tax deductions. And so it was 10,000. They got it up to like 40,000. And so because they got such a much bigger deduction, it kind of blew a hole in the deficit projections. So they said, well, we can't now cut Social Security. Well, I don't care, man. Then go back to these rhinos and say 40,000 is way too much. Take it down to 30 or 20. Or keep it at 10. I don't care. But Social Security should not be taxed. So, anyway. But Jay, that's the long answer to your very good question. Jay, thank you very much for that call. 617-266-6868. Look, I want to be clear. It's not a perfect bill. Trump himself would admit that. There are clearly problems with the bill. There's no denying that. But overall, it is a very good bill. It is going to drive down inflation. It is going to, it's going to inject rocket fuel into the economy. It is going to drive down unemployment. Its economic growth is going to skyrocket. It is going to explode. You are going to see literally millions and millions and millions of private sector jobs being created. It is going to completely secure the border permanently. It is going to give ICE and the DHS all the resources, all the money, all the manpower, the personnel that they need to deport millions of illegals. And it's going to completely rebuild the military. So most of Trump's campaign promises are in that bill, and they're going to be achieved. It's not perfect, no, but it's damn good. And just on immigration alone, on the border invasion alone, I'm with Tom Homan. Completely with him. Homan said, I don't get these senators. This will end sanctuary cities, this bill. It will help us to completely repel and deport out of the country all of the illegal aliens that Biden brought in. and we get the wall, and we get to militarize the border, I mean, the invasion is finished. It's over. So how many American lives are we going to save by passing this bill? We will finally have something we haven't had in forever, which is an actual, real, secure border. Not just for 1 month or 6 months, but, for decades into the future. 617-266-6868. Okay, I don't want to rush it. I'm going to go to Mike in Alabama, but let me just set the table. Big, beautiful bill is now being debated as we speak. They're going to go all night if they need. They went all night last night. They're going to go all night again tonight for a final vote. Rand Paul is a hard no. Tom Tillis, the Judas, is a hard no. One more vote goes. If they lose one more vote, they're going to need J.D. Vance to be the tiebreaker. 617-266-6868 is the number. Let's go to Mike in the great state of Alabama. Thanks for holding, Mike, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. How's it going?
Very good. How are you, Mike?
Good. You were talking about Paul Pelosi a few minutes ago.
Yes.
What President Trump needs to do is go back to 1970.
Mike, can you do me a favor? You're on speaker. We can barely hear you. Can you please pick up your phone?
Okay, can you hear me?
Oh, loud and clear. Go ahead, Mike.
So President Trump needs to go back to 1970, hire one of Elon's masterminds. Every politician that went into office, what they were worth before they were in office and what they were worth when they came out of office.
Oh, I agree, Mike. Oh, I think there's no question. I mean, we have to, I think, start, publicizing just how corrupt and greedy and crooked these politicians are. I'm with you all the way, Mike. Look, just to give you an example, the average member of Congress, this is just average member of Congress. Remember, their salary is $174,000 a year, okay, which is not a bad salary. Remember, they get all kinds of, eating expenses, living expenses, housing expenses. They've got, incredible health care, gold-plated. They got a great pension, gold-plated, as I said, health care, dental plan. I mean, they get the Cadillac plans. So, it's nice. They're treated well. Well, on average, they make an extra $1.6 million a year every year that they're in office. Again, they're making $174,000. On top of that, it's just the average, $1.6 million, and in the following year, $1.6 million, and in the following year, $1.6 million. So, they're basically making $3-4 million every 2 years. That's just the average. Okay, you have others that make a lot more. They steal a lot more. So this is how corrupt it is. So what happens is, after a while, even if you're an honest person, you say to yourself, let me get this straight. I'm making $175, and everybody around me is making millions and millions and millions, and they're raking it in. Elizabeth Warren is already now, she's worth north of $40-50 million. As I told you, the Pelosi's are worth now almost north of $500 million. So what happens is, after a while, these guys say these men and women say to themselves, I'm a sucker, man. Everybody's on the gravy train except me? I don't think so. So the temptation is so big, it's so lucrative, that it takes exceptional character, really exceptional willpower, to say, no, I'm not going to do it. That's why I'm a big believer in term limits. Big believer in term limits. But look, I want to come back, and I want to ask all of you really two questions. What do you make of the big, beautiful bill itself? For example, it's not going to be no tax on Social Security. They've rolled that back. Are you upset? Are you disappointed? What do you say to the argument? This is the argument now that Rand Paul, Thomas Massie in the House is going to make the same argument. He's voting against it if they pass it in the Senate. That it's too much, it adds too much to the debt. It spends too much, it adds too much to the deficit. And so they're arguing on fiscal responsibility grounds. That's why they're voting against it. Do you agree, disagree? And is Rand Paul a Judas? Is Tom Tillis a Judas? But let's take Rand Paul as an example. He keeps voting against Trump over and over again. He voted with all the Democrats to tie Trump's hands if he wants to attack Iran again. Now, they defeated Rand Paul and the Democrats, but still, he crossed the aisle again to restrain Trump and his ability to attack Iran. He's always conveniently voting for the Democrats. Now, on Trump's signature, big, beautiful bill. I mean, this is the centerpiece of his entire second term. This is what sets up the booming economy. This is what sets up the border. This is what sets up the mass deportations. This is what rebuilds and funds our military completely. I could go on, but these are the key provisions. This is essentially now his presidency on the line. And Rand Paul is a hard no and sticks it right to him. Is it time to primary Rand Paul? Not just Thomas Massie, but Rand Paul. And if Trump does go all in to primary Rand Paul, will Rand Paul resign the way Tom Tillis did? In other words, are you getting sick of these grandstanding Republicans? I'm just curious. Or do you support them? 617-266-6868 is the number. Ken in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Ken, and welcome.
Jeff, good morning,
Ken,
Jeff.
how are you?
Winning, winning, winning. That's all I got to say. Now, you speak of Tom, and if you polled 100 people on the street, like a password, Tom, I think there would be more Edisons than Tillis. Seriously, I don't know if there'd be one Tillis. People don't know who he is. He's a dead man walking. Let's be serious. Did you catch the poll from North Carolina among Republican voters? They compared Tom Tillis with Laura Trump, who got 60% to Tillis's 11%. You got the picture? So he got a blowback like you wouldn't believe yesterday from the constituents. And guess what? It was like Roberto Duran, no mas. And guess what? The reaction among all the other Republicans, House or Senate, they're ringing that guy in the EU last week. Who's your daddy? Who's your daddy? Hey, could anything be better? So you ask. Am I for the Triple B, big, beautiful bill? Well, I'll tell you how for I'm it. I was a registered Republican for 37 years until May of 2016. I had enough of the guys in D.C., whether it be Mitch McConnell or the others, who refused to listen to we, the voters. And I became an independent, unenrolled in Massachusetts. I've since moved to New Hampshire, stayed unenrolled. But I did campaign in the past, in particular in 22, a particular candidate for the House. Oh, Caroline Levitt, loved her, knocked on doors, donated to her. That's how committed I am. And let me tell you, when this bill is passed through the House, sometime this week, hopefully, either that day or the following day,
Mike, you're kidding. You're kidding. 617-266-6868 if you want to be part of the show. Couple lines are open. Let's go right back to Ken in New Hampshire. Ken, I can't believe Mike did it to you, but anyway, just when you're at your culminating point, the climax of your point, he loves to press that button. So, okay, Mike, you're saying when they pass that big, beautiful bill later this week, and you're convinced it's going to get through the Senate, it's going to get through the House, you were, and then Mike took us to break. So I take, you're going to pop a champagne cork, or is that what you're planning to do, Ken?
Very simple, Jeff. I'm going to my town hall, and I'm registered Republican.
Oh, you're going to re-register as a Republican.
You got it. And everybody out there should do it that's been in my shoes. Absolutely. But, Jeff, with all the celebration, there's a somber note that we need to take seriously. We've been winning, but our enemy is preparing. We have to be prepared through July 4th for terrorism. And I have a little birdie that warns me that that's a distinct possibility. So people have to be prepared. First, if you see something suspicious and you're not quite so certain, call your local PD, non-emergency line, and just file what you saw. If you're like in the gut, you're like, this smells. 911. Tell them what you're seeing. And if it's really bad, in your gut, this is about to happen. Jeff, can I give your audience nationwide a number?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
My number, 978-641-4505. I will call my birdie. My birdie has high power in D.C., and we can get action right away. And if there's anything about to happen, this is our permanent victory for a long time if we can snub out anything they try.
Well, I think you're right on every count, Ken. I think you passed a big, beautiful bill. I think you're going to see this economy, just roar. I think you're going to see deportations intensify. You're going to see, you think the world fears us now under Trump. Wait till he puts in the changes to the military and the improvements to the military that this bill now is going to fund and it's going to approve. So you're looking now at really America will be back. America, it's making America great again. America will be back. No question. And look, I am very worried about the 4th of July. I'm worried about the mullahs. I'm worried about the Ayatollahs in Iran. I'm sure many of you have heard about that fire, that tragic fire up in Idaho, in which it now appears it was deliberately set by some madman who had a gun, set the fire as a way to ambush firefighters. And apparently now 3 firefighters were shot. They went into a burning house that he lit. 2 are dead. 1 is fighting for his life. Barely clinging to life. The FBI is sending hundreds of law enforcement there. You have police there. And everybody's on pins and needles. Because the fear is this terrorism? Well, we don't know. I'm just saying. But you can tell everybody's on edge. This was an ambush. Talk about sick. Just sick. You set a fire to lure in firefighters who are risking their lives battling this blaze. So then you can just boom, 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 and take them out, to murder them, to assassinate them. Now, apparently they're saying that the gunman is dead. He was, and the gun was found beside him. So, and they're looking into possible terrorism connections. Again, we don't know if it was terrorism. If it was, maybe it was just a crazy guy. But still, everybody's on pins and needles. Everybody is, that's a story I'm watching very closely. And you'd say, I spoke about it with Grace last night. She said, Idaho? Would they even have a terrorist cell in Idaho? I'm like, have you seen the Iranian nationals that are being arrested by the FBI and Trump's DOJ? They're in Minnesota. They're in Colorado. They're in California. They're in Texas. They're in Arizona. They're in upstate New York. They're everywhere. Biden let them in, and they resettled them everywhere. So, yeah, I'm with you all the way, Ken. Be vigilant. You see something, say something. 617, and thank you for that call. 617-266-6868. David in Medford. Thanks for holding, David. and welcome.
Let me cut to the chase. I'm going to segue from last Friday. You had your last caller from last Friday, because I was going to be with him. He came on and he asked you all to calm down, let Trump and his people, Justice Department, AG, let them do whatever work they got to do instead of trying to push them. We're not even a year in. All that is now coming to a fruition. You got the Supreme Court win, which blew a lot of people away, but that had to be the work of Bondi and the Justice Department, okay? And then that had to be the work of Trump, who was standing tight, saying, I'm going to follow the court. That way, the traders in the media couldn't go, look at this, which is like throwing interference in there. So that goes, okay, look, I'm going to let it hang. I'm going to follow the court. Let it go. So everyone's thrown it down. I think when Trump, Vance, and I thought it was a congressional leader said, I think we should impeach some of these judges. You got John Roberts, the squeaky voice dude, say, oh, that's not the way it should be. Well, I think it's stuck in his mind. It may have stuck in all 9 of them, but it's stuck in his mind. And they're like, you know what? We really are going. This is the judicial system going totally bad. And then you got the Congress who does nothing. And that's what everybody in the Kuhner country is going to look. Congress is a bummer. And then you got the president who's pushing on his second term right through everyone. And like Reagan, he should get on the boob tube and he should say, here's your people. This is what I'm looking to do. And then put on the big screen. You see these people here that belong to your state? They're blocking it. They blocked your Social Security, all you people who don't want it. Right there. See the people? Remember. See? And then do the publicity. What do they call it? The pundit booth or whatever they call it when you get up there. It's got the publicity where he can do that.
Yeah, the bully pulpit. No, you're right. The bully pulpit. Yeah, the bully pulpit. No, look, David, I agree with you, and I think you're making a really, really good point. Now, look, I don't want to count my chickens before they're hatched because it's going to be a close vote. And there's a lot of pressure on some of these Republicans to stab Trump in the back and to vote no. And it's going to also be razor thin in the House. So, again, he's got, like Iran, he's going to have to thread the needle. But if he does thread the needle, say he gets the big, beautiful bill passed, he's planning to do a big signing ceremony at the White House, 4th of July, or the 4th of July weekend. And I think he should address the American people. And I think he should say, I wanted no tax on Social Security. Let me tell you who blocked me. Okay, just super, super quick. Okay, super quick, because I want to go to John in South Yarmouth. We had an elderly gentleman call in. And this person was saying, like, is Kuhner right? Like, do you pay taxes on Social Security? He's like, I have my accountant pay my taxes, and I'm telling you, I don't pay taxes on Social Security. Trust me, okay? Maybe your accountant pays it for you in terms of, he takes care of all your taxes for you. Maybe you checked off the box years ago. Yes, tax my Social Security, and you don't realize it, or you forgot, or whatever, or you don't qualify. There's got to be a certain income threshold. If you make a little bit less than the income threshold, yeah, they don't tax Social Security. But that's, that's low income. I'm telling you, most people are taxed on their Social Security. Trust me, take it to the bank. So, if you're not paying taxes on Social Security, again, unless you're below a certain income level, you may want to talk to your accountant. Because technically you could be not paying, you could be considered a tax fraud or a tax cheat. But yes. Pardon me, Mike? Yeah, or don't say anything. Mike is saying, and at this point, if you've been getting away with it for all these years, maybe just don't say anything and continue to get away with it. But trust me, they tax Social Security. They tax everything. There's three things they don't tax. Breathing, which they will. Flushing the toilet, which they will. And, sex. Have a roll in the hay. But I'm telling you, they're going to tax all three. Trust me, it's coming. It's coming. John in South Yarmouth. Thanks for holding, John, and welcome.
Jeff, I just wanted to make a comment, though, that I will back Rand Paul on one point, and that is the national debt. We have a situation where it's all of some of the media that's saying that BRICS is going to make some kind of move against the U.S. dollar this as early as this Sunday. I honestly think we can get Rand Paul and other Republicans who are against this bill on our side if we do just one thing. And I know you say Donald Trump could be listening to this program. I hope he is, because the one thing is have a statement saying that we are going to, when we start doing all these cuts, that a certain percentage of that will go to the payment of the national debt. And I think a lot of Republicans would be relieved, a lot of strain. I think we fiscally would be much more responsible, but I honestly think we have to address the national debt at some point. Otherwise, other countries are going to, weaken the U.S. dollar. That's my only point.
Well, no, John, look, it's a very good point. And it's not just Rand's point. It's also the same point of Elon. Again, Elon came out again over the weekend saying it's a terrible bill. He's urging Republicans to vote against it. I think he's wrong. But one of his main arguments is this. He goes, it blows a hole through the deficit. And it's going to it's going to pile on more debt upon more debt. And he's worried it's going to lead to the dollar collapsing eventually. And you're right. You mentioned BRICS. You've got Russia, China, India, Brazil, South Africa trying to form a rival currency to undermine and destroy the dollar. So we have to be very careful. Look, Trump has openly said, and I think this is where you may disagree with me, John. I'm just giving you my honest opinion. This is where I think Rand Paul is being slightly disingenuous. Trump has come out and said, hey, look, who was the guy that set up Doge? I did. Who was the one that said, invited Elon into the administration and said, Elon, find me trillions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse. Let's go. So Trump has said, look, I want to cut spending. Once the bill is passed, send me rescissions. It's called rescissions. In other words, give me spending cuts. I'll sign every single one of them in. So it's not like we passed the big, beautiful bill and suddenly we can't do anything for 10 years. So Trump is saying, look, I need the bill to implement my key priorities. And you got to make compromises. That's just the way it is. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And this is very good. Not good, very good. But he said, look, if Rand Paul is this great fiscal hawk that he claims, send me a rescissions package. I'll back it all the way. Codify the Doge cuts. I'll back it all the way. And so, look, Rand Paul is making a big name for himself now. And I think Trump is really onto something when he says, opposing me gives you a lot of cachet and a lot of new street cred on the left and the media. And I think that's part of the motive. But I'm with you. Trump should come out and say, we're going to after this bill is passed, we're going to tackle the debt and the deficit. And I think he needs to come out strongly. He's got to become more of a fiscal hawk in the last 3 years of his presidency. Because you're right, this debt, it's too big, it's too dangerous, it's just too much. Can I squeeze one more in, Mike? I can't. Boy, Mike, let me tell you, man, you get a little power. Look at Mike. Huh? Look at Mike. Holy man. Mike, maybe they should be calling you a threat to democracy, Mike. Maybe you're the wannabe dictator, Mike. Forget Trump. I'm just saying, Mike.